Dawn split the horizon with a thin gray line when the order came to pull back.
Contact
But
front!
Corporal
Get
Rebecca
low!
Hayes did not move. In the freezing mist that clung to the charred hillside, the sniper lay motionless behind her rifle, the barrel still radiating heat from hours of unbroken fire. Below
Apply
her
pressure
position,
here.
the entire platoon was pinned down by dense enemy fire converging from three
Holding it
directions.
tight.
No air support, no reinforcements, only one choice remained. If she withdrew, they would die. If she stayed, she might never leave this ridge. As the sun began to rise, she squeezed the trigger on the first shot of the battle that would define her life. 0547 hours. The valley floor stretched out in shades of gray beneath a sky that refused to commit to morning. Staff Sergeant Marcus Holloway raised his fist, halting the patrol. 32 soldiers froze in formation, their breath forming small clouds in the cold air. Private First Class Diana Chen whispered from her position near the rear. She had that feeling again, the one that made her skin crawl during training exercises that always ended badly. Something was wrong. Quiet, Holloway murmured, but his eyes were already scanning the ridgelines. The terrain opened up ahead of them like an invitation. Too open, too clean. The intelligence report had marked this sector as a low-threat zone, a simple patrol route to secure before the main convoy arrived at 0800. Rebecca Hayes adjusted her position on the western ridge, 400 meters above the platoon. From here, she could see what they could not, the entire valley laid out like a tactical map. Her spotter, Corporal James Mitchell, lay beside her with the rangefinder. "Radio's acting up," Mitchell said quietly, "getting interference on 3 channels." Rebecca's finger moved to rest beside the trigger guard. Not on it. Not yet. But close. "How long?" she asked. "Started maybe 2 minutes ago. Could be atmospheric." "It's not atmospheric." The silence in the valley pressed down like a physical weight. No birds, no insects. Even the wind had died. In her 3 tours, Rebecca had learned to read the space between sounds. This was the silence that came before violence. Below, Holloway made the decision to advance. The platoon moved forward in textbook formation, clearing sectors, maintaining intervals. Everything by the manual. Everything correct. Everything wrong. The first shot came from the northeast ridge at 0551 hours. A single crack that echoed across the valley and dropped Private Ethan Walsh to the ground before anyone could react. Then the world exploded. Rebecca Hayes had been a question mark since she arrived at the unit 6 months ago. Not because she was a woman, plenty of women served in combat roles. The question was her silence. She spoke when spoken to, followed orders without commentary, and spent her downtime maintaining her rifle or studying topographical maps. "She's competent," Lieutenant Bradley Frost had said during her initial evaluation. "Scores are solid, but she doesn't engage with the team. Makes me wonder if she'll hold up under pressure." What they did not know, what Rebecca never spoke about, was the reason she had requested transfer to a forward unit. Her previous deployment had ended with a convoy ambush in which her inability to take a clear shot, due to civilian presence, had cost 2 lives. The investigation cleared her. The guilt did not. She had spent 18 months retraining, reshaping herself into a weapon that would not hesitate again. Not out of recklessness, but from the cold certainty that indecision killed more people than bad decisions. Lieutenant Frost had given her the ridge assignment with specific instructions. Overwatch only. Report enemy positions. Do not engage unless fired upon directly. The platoon had a new executive officer, Captain Neil Richardson, who was running his first field operation. He wanted everything controlled, measured, predictable. "Hayes is your eye in the sky," Frost had told Holloway during the pre-mission brief. "But keep her on a leash. She's too eager to prove something." Rebecca had said nothing. She never did. She just checked her rifle one more time and moved to position before dawn. Now, as chaos erupted below, Mitchell was already calling it in. Ambush, multiple positions, northeast and southwest ridges. Rebecca's scope found the first target. Enemy fighter, 700 meters, elevated position behind a rock outcropping. He was firing controlled bursts into the valley floor where Holloway's team was scrambling for cover. "Hayes, do you have visual on enemy positions?" Frost's voice crackled through the radio. "Confirmed. Multiple hostiles on opposing ridges. They have crossfire established on the valley floor. Report only. Do not engage without authorization." Rebecca's finger rested on the trigger. The fighter in her scope adjusted his position, zeroing in on a cluster of soldiers trying to reach cover. She recognized the uniformed Private Chen's fire team. "They're pinned," she said into the radio. "Permission to engage." "Negative. Air support is 7 minutes out. Maintain observation. 7 minutes. Rebecca calculated the math instantly. In 7 minutes, half the platoon would be casualties. She watched the enemy fighter fire again. A scream carried up from the valley. Someone hit. She breathed out slowly. Held it. Squeezed. The rifle kicked. The enemy fighter dropped. "Hayes!" I said, "Hold fire!" Frost's voice exploded through the radio. Rebecca was already tracking the next target. "Engaging," she said flatly, and fired again. The ambush had been planned with precision. 3 machine gun positions on elevated ground created a kill zone with no viable exit. The valley floor offered minimal cover, a few scattered boulders, a dried creek bed, nothing that could protect 32 people from sustained fire. Holloway pressed himself against a boulder as rounds chewed into the rock above his head. His radio operator, Specialist Kyle Turner, lay 3 meters away, clutching his leg where a bullet had torn through his thigh. "Turner, can you move?" "Negative." Turner's face was white with pain, but his hands were still working, trying to reach the radio handset that had fallen when he went down. Sergeant Patricia Vega crawled up beside Holloway, dragging her rifle. "Sir, we've got at least 8 confirmed enemy positions. They have us in a textbook L-shaped ambush. If we stay here, we're dead." "Where's Richardson?" "Back with 2nd Squad." Vega's expression said everything. Captain Richardson's first combat engagement was not going according to any manual he had studied. Another burst of fire raked across their position. Holloway heard someone crying out, "Private Andrew Foster," hit in the shoulder. Corporal Lisa Monroe was already moving toward him, but the covering fire was too heavy. Then one of the enemy guns went silent. Then another. Holloway risked a look toward the western ridge where he had left Hayes. He could not see her, which was the point of a good sniper position, but he could see the results of her work. 2 enemy positions neutralized in less than 30 seconds. "Hayes is engaging," Vega said, a note of something like hope in her voice. "She's disobeying direct orders." Lieutenant Frost's voice came through Holloway's earpiece. "Tell her to cease fire immediately." Holloway looked at the wounded, at the soldiers pinned behind inadequate cover, at the kill zone they were trapped in. He made a decision that would probably end his career. "Radio malfunction," he said. "Cannot relay that order." Silence on the channel. Then, "Understood." Rebecca worked methodically. 12 enemy positions identified in the first 30 seconds. Now she dismantled them by threat priority. Heavy machine guns. First they had the range to keep the platoon suppressed. Then the designated marksman. Mitchell fed her corrections. Wind shifted. Add .2 mils left. Confirmed. Adjust. Breathe. Fire. Another position went dark. But the enemy was adapting. Movement on the northeast ridge, fighters repositioning, trying to locate her. They were trained. They knew how to hunt a sniper. "They're looking for us," Mitchell said. "We should displace." Rebecca took the next shot. Then the next. 5 positions neutralized. The platoon below was moving now, using her suppression to reach cover, to pull back the wounded. A bullet cracked past her head. They had found her. "All units, this is command." Captain Richardson's voice came through the radio, tight with stress. "We have hostile forces in strength. Air support is delayed. Weather conditions have grounded the birds. We are implementing tactical withdrawal. Fall back to Rally Point Charlie. Acknowledge." One by one, the squad leaders confirmed. 1st Squad, 2nd Squad, 3rd Squad, Weapons Squad. "Overwatch. Acknowledge," Richardson said. Rebecca looked down at the valley floor. The platoon was moving now, but they were still exposed. The enemy had pulled back from her fields of fire, but they had not withdrawn. They were repositioning, setting up new angles of attack. She could see what command could not see from their position. The withdrawal route to Rally Point Charlie would take the platoon directly through a natural choke point, a narrow defile between 2 ridges. If the enemy reached that position first, the entire platoon would be trapped in an even worse kill zone than the one they were in now. "Overwatch acknowledges," she said, "but advise withdrawal route is compromised. Enemy is moving to cut off Rally Point Charlie." "There is no alternative route," Richardson said. "The terrain does not allow it. We move now or we stay pinned until they bring up mortars." Rebecca understood the mathematics of the situation. Command was making the best decision they could make with the information they had, but they could not see what she could see. "If someone holds the western ridge," she said slowly, "the enemy cannot establish position at the choke point. Clear line of sight, 800 meters. Lieutenant Frost understood immediately. "Negative, Hayes. No one stays behind. That's an order." "Then the platoon does not make it to Rally Point Charlie," Rebecca said, not arguing, just stating fact. Mitchell was staring at her. Becca, they'll converge on this position the second the platoon moves. We'll be facing the entire enemy force alone. I know. That's suicide. That's geometry. Holloway's voice cut through the channel. Hayes, I'm not leaving you on that ridge. You're not leaving me, Staff Sergeant. I'm staying. Mitchell will withdraw with the platoon. Like hell I will, Mitchell said. Rebecca turned to look at him directly. You're a spotter. Without a shooter, you're useless here. Get to the platoon. That's where you're needed. Hayes Frost started. No one survives alone, Richardson said. That's final. Overwatch will withdraw with. Rebecca switched off her radio. Mitchell grabbed her arm. Becca, you can't. I already did. She pulled free gently but firmly. You need to move, now, before they realize the platoon is withdrawing. I'm not leaving you. Yes, you are, because if you stay, you die. If you leave, you might live. Simple math. She was already redistributing her ammunition, calculating how long she could hold the position. And because I need you to do something for me. Mitchell's jaw was tight. What? Tell them I followed orders. Tell them the radio malfunctioned and I couldn't hear the withdrawal command. Tell them whatever you need to tell them so this doesn't destroy their careers. She met his eyes. Please. For a long moment, Mitchell said nothing. Then he nodded once, sharply. He grabbed the spare ammunition pouches he could not carry and placed them next to her position. 30 minutes, he said. That's how long until we're clear. 30 minutes, then you displace. You hear me? I hear you. 30 minutes, Hayes. Go. He went. Rebecca was alone on the ridge. Below, the platoon was beginning their tactical withdrawal, moving in coordinated groups, covering each other's movement. They were good soldiers, well trained. They deserved to make it home. She shifted her position 30 meters to the north, to a secondary hide she had identified during her initial reconnaissance. The enemy would be tracking her previous position. Let them waste ammunition on empty ground. From the new position, she had clear sight lines to the entire valley floor and the approaches to Rally Point Charlie. She could see enemy fighters beginning to move, trying to parallel the platoon's withdrawal route. She began to fire. Not the careful, methodical shooting from before. This was suppression. Volume of fire. Make the enemy take cover, slow their advance, buy seconds that added up to minutes. The response was immediate. Every enemy fighter who had been hunting for her position now knew exactly where she was. Fire converged on the ridge from multiple angles. Bullets cracked past her head, kicked up dirt around her position, whined off rocks. Rebecca did not flinch. She had crossed a line where fear became irrelevant. There was only the next shot, the next target, the next moment of time she could buy for the soldiers moving through the valley below. An RPG streaked toward her position, detonating 15 meters short. The concussion wave slammed into her, filling her mouth with dirt and her ears with ringing. She rolled back to her rifle, checked the scope still functional, and resumed firing. The platoon was halfway to Rally Point Charlie. 15 minutes had passed. The sun was fully above the horizon now, burning off the mist in uneven patches. Rebecca used the remaining fog as cover, shifting positions constantly. Fire from one spot, displace, set up, fire again. Never stay in one location long enough for them to zero in. But there were too many of them and only one of her. She had identified at least 15 enemy fighters actively hunting her position. They were spreading out, moving in a coordinated sweep pattern that would eventually box her in against the ridge line. Professional, military trained. Rebecca prioritized her targets with cold calculation. Leaders first, anyone directing the sweep, then anyone with heavy weapons, then anyone who got close enough to pose an immediate threat. Her ammunition was running low. She had started with 120 rounds. She was down to 43. Every shot had to matter. She dropped an enemy squad leader at 600 meters. The squad immediately went to ground, losing cohesion, buying her precious seconds. She displaced again, moving to a position that gave her sightlines to the eastern approach. 2 fighters were trying to flank her, working their way up a gully that would put them above her position. She let them come, waiting until they were committed to the climb, then took them both in rapid succession. The angle was difficult, extreme elevation, moving targets, but she had trained for difficult. 31 rounds left. The platoon was 3/4 of the way to Rally Point Charlie. She could see them moving through her scope, tiny figures in the distance. Almost safe, almost clear. But the enemy commander had realized what was happening. He was pulling fighters back from the pursuit, consolidating them for an assault on her position. They were going to rush her, overwhelming her with numbers and firepower. Rebecca counted heads. 20 fighters gathering in a dry creek bed, 400 meters from her position. In 2 minutes, maybe 3, they would advance. She could kill maybe 10 of them before they reached her. The rest would overrun her position. She looked down at the platoon. 5 more minutes and they would be clear of the kill zone, beyond effective range of pursuit. 5 minutes she did not have, unless she gave them a reason to stop. Rebecca identified the enemy commander, the one directing the assault, positioning his fighters. He was in cover, protected by terrain and his own soldiers. But he had made a mistake. He had positioned himself where he could see his entire force, which meant she could see him. The range was 940 meters. Uphill, variable wind. A shot that would push her rifle to its limit and her skills beyond any training scenario she had ever faced. She had one chance. Rebecca settled into her position with complete focus. Everything else fell away, the incoming fire, the exhaustion, the knowledge that this would likely be her last shot. There was only the target, the rifle, the moment between heartbeats. She calculated the ballistics in her head. 940 meters. Elevation gain of approximately 70 meters. Wind from the northeast at 8 knots, gusting to 12. Temperature rising as the sun climbed, affecting air density. The enemy commander was partially concealed behind a boulder, only his head and shoulders visible. A target area of perhaps 18 inches. At this range, with these conditions, the margin of error was measured in millimeters. She adjusted her scope, dialed in the elevation, calculated the wind drift. Her breathing slowed, deepened, became a rhythm older than thought. The enemy fighters in the creek bed were starting to move, beginning their assault. She had seconds before they broke into the open, and she would have to engage them instead. The commander leaned forward slightly, gesturing to someone out of her sight line. The movement exposed him, just barely, just enough. Rebecca's finger rested on the trigger. She inhaled, exhaled halfway, held. In that moment of absolute stillness, she thought about the convoy ambush, the shot she did not take, the guilt that had driven her to this ridge, to this moment. She thought about the platoon moving through the valley below, 32 lives depending on a decision made in the space of a heartbeat. She thought about nothing at all. She squeezed the trigger. The rifle kicked. The world narrowed to the sight picture. Through the scope, she watched the bullet cover 940 meters in approximately 1.3 seconds time, enough to wonder if she had calculated correctly, if the wind had held, if the target would move. The enemy commander dropped. The effect was immediate. The fighters in the creek bed hesitated, looking back toward their commander's position. The coordinated assault dissolved into confusion. Some fighters moved toward their fallen commander. Others held position, uncertain. Rebecca did not wait to see more. She targeted the fighter who looked like he was trying to take command, dropped him with her second-to-last round. Then she fired her final shot at the heavy weapon position that still had the range to threaten the platoon. Her rifle was empty. She transitioned to her sidearm, a pistol with 15 rounds, useless at any range beyond 50 meters. The enemy would figure out she was no longer a threat soon enough. When they did, they would come for her. But the platoon was clear. She could see them reaching Rally Point Charlie, disappearing into the cover of the tree line. Safe. Rebecca allowed herself one deep breath. Then she began her own withdrawal. The enemy did not pursue. With their commander dead and their assault broken, they pulled back to regroup. Rebecca used the confusion to move off the ridge, working her way north through terrain too rough for vehicles, too exposed for large forces. She moved for 3 hours, putting distance between herself and the battlefield. When she finally stopped, it was because her legs would not carry her further. She found cover in a cluster of boulders and allowed herself to collapse. Only then did she turn her radio back on. Overwatch. Respond. Hayes, if you can hear this, Holloway's voice, strained with something that might have been hope or might have been grief. This is Overwatch, Rebecca said. Her voice came out as a rasp. The silence on the other end lasted 3 heartbeats. Then, Hayes, give me your position. She read off the coordinates from her GPS. Stay there. Do not move. We're coming to get you. Negative. Enemy is still active in the area. Do not risk. Hayes. Holloway's voice was flat, brooking no argument. We left you on that ridge. We are not leaving you in these hills. Helicopter is inbound. Ida 20 minutes. You will wait. Rebecca closed her eyes. Copy. The 20 minutes stretched into an eternity. She kept expecting enemy fighters to appear, kept her pistol ready, kept watching the approaches to her position. But no one came. When she finally heard the helicopter, the sound brought a relief so profound it felt like pain. The bird came in low and fast, its door gunners scanning for threats. It touched down just long enough for her to climb aboard, then pulled up hard, banking away from the valley. Mitchell was there, and he grabbed her arm to steady her as the helicopter climbed. "You're insane," he said. "Completely insane." "Probably," she agreed. "That last shot, 900 meters uphill. I saw it on the drone footage. That was impossible." 940, she said. "And it wasn't impossible. I made it." The helicopter carried her back to base, back to whatever consequences awaited her for disobeying direct orders, back to questions she would have to answer and reports she would have to file. But 32 soldiers who had walked into that valley at dawn would walk out alive. And that, she thought, was mathematics she could live with. The debriefing took place in a gray-walled room that smelled of stale coffee and old stress. Captain Richardson sat across from Rebecca, his face unreadable. Lieutenant Frost stood by the wall, arms crossed. A recording device sat on the table between them. "Corporal Hayes," Richardson began, "you disobeyed a direct order to withdraw. You disabled your radio during combat operations. You engaged enemy forces without authorization. Do you dispute any of these facts?" "No, sir." "Do you understand the severity of these infractions?" "Yes, sir." Richardson leaned back in his chair. "Then explain to me why I should not have you court-martialed." Rebecca met his eyes. "I have no explanation that would satisfy a court-martial, sir. I made a tactical decision based on the information available to me. The decision violated protocol. It also saved lives." 32 lives, Lieutenant Frost said quietly from his position by the wall. It was the first time he had spoken. Richardson looked at him sharply. "That's not the point, Lieutenant." "With respect, sir, it's exactly the point." Frost pushed off from the wall. "I've reviewed the drone footage. I've read the after-action reports from every squad leader. If Hayes had followed orders and withdrawn, the enemy would have cut us off at the choke point. We would have taken massive casualties. Instead, we took 0 KIA and 3 wounded, all of whom are stable. Because Hayes decided she knew better than her commanding officer," Richardson said. "Because Hayes could see what we could not see," Frost said. "She had the high ground, she had the tactical picture, and she made the call that needed to be made." He looked at Rebecca. "The call I should have made and did not." The room fell silent. Richardson's fingers drummed on the table, once, twice. "The chain of command exists for a reason, Lieutenant." "It does, sir. And so do soldiers who think for themselves instead of following orders that will get their comrades killed." Frost's voice was steady. "If you court-martial Hayes, you'll need to court-martial me as well. I gave her a tactical assignment that put her in position to make that decision. And I'm the one who told Holloway his radio was malfunctioning." Richardson stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned off the recording device. "This is off the record," he said. "What you did, Hayes, was brave and stupid in approximately equal measure. In a different situation, with different results, we would be having a very different conversation." He stood up. "But Lieutenant Frost is correct. You saved lives. All of them." He walked to the door, paused with his hand on the handle. "The official report will state that your radio malfunctioned, and you continued to provide fire support based on your last received orders. You will be recommended for commendation for actions under fire." He looked back at her. "But unofficially, between us, I want you to understand something. The reason I gave the order to withdraw was because I was afraid. I was in my first combat engagement, and I made the safe choice instead of the right choice. You made the right choice because you were not afraid." "I was terrified, sir," Rebecca said quietly. Richardson smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "Then you're braver than I am." He left the room. Frost remained. He extended his hand. "I underestimated you. I will not make that mistake again." Rebecca shook his hand. "You gave me the assignment, sir. You put me in position." "No," Frost said. "You put yourself there when you decided to become the soldier who does not hesitate when hesitation costs lives." He released her hand. "That final shot, 940 meters uphill. I've seen Olympic shooters miss that. I trained for it, sir." "You trained to be perfect. There's a difference." He paused. "Why?" Rebecca told him about the convoy, the shot she did not take, the 2 soldiers who died because she hesitated. When she finished, Frost was quiet. "You were cleared. The investigation was wrong, sir. Or maybe you've been punishing yourself for a reasonable decision under impossible circumstances." He moved toward the door. "Either way, Hayes, you proved today who you wanted to become. I hope that brings you peace." It did not. Not yet. But perhaps, in time, it would. The official after-action report was filed 3 days later. It was precise, technical, and sanitized of anything that might raise uncomfortable questions about command decisions under fire. Corporal Rebecca Hayes was commended for providing effective fire support during a platoon-level engagement. Radio malfunction had prevented receipt of withdrawal orders. No disciplinary action recommended. The unofficial version spread through the unit in the way that truth always spreads among soldiers who trust each other with their lives. She stayed behind. She held the ridge alone. She made the shot that saved us all. Rebecca did not encourage the stories. She did not discourage them. She continued her routine, maintaining her rifle, studying maps, training, but something had changed. When she walked through the company area, soldiers nodded. Not polite acknowledgement, but recognition of respect earned. Private Chen approached her at the range one evening. "Corporal Hayes, I wanted to thank you. My fire team was pinned down at the start. If you hadn't done what you did, we wouldn't have made it out." Rebecca paused. "You made it out because you kept your head, Private. I just gave you time." "You gave us more than time," Chen said. "What you did took courage. I hope I have that courage if I'm ever in that position." "I hope you never are," Rebecca said. "But if you are, you'll make the decision that needs to be made." After Chen left, Mitchell sat beside her. "They're calling you the ghost now, because you disappeared after making that impossible shot. That's ridiculous. That's the military. We love our legends." He watched her work. "Are you ever going to talk about what you were thinking up there?" Rebecca was quiet. "I was thinking about the convoy, about whether I was making the same mistake or correcting it." She set down her cleaning rod. "I was thinking that if I died on that ridge, at least I died trying to save people instead of watching them die while I hesitated. And now? Now I know I can make the shot when it matters. That knowledge doesn't erase what happened before, but it makes it possible to live with it." 3 months later, when the unit rotated home, there was a small ceremony. No cameras, no press, just the platoon that had walked into that valley at dawn and walked back out alive. Staff Sergeant Holloway presented Rebecca with a gift from the platoon, a brass plaque engraved with coordinates. The coordinates of the ridge where she had made her stand. "In case you ever forget," Holloway said, "where you proved that one soldier with courage and skill can change everything." Rebecca took the plaque. It was heavy, heavier than brass should be. "I didn't change anything," she said. "I just did my job." "You did your job," Holloway agreed. "And in doing it, you saved 32 lives, including mine. That's not nothing, Hayes. That's everything that matters." That night, Rebecca stood alone on the base perimeter, looking out at the darkness beyond the fence line. She thought about the ridge, about the precise moment when she had switched off her radio and made the decision that would come to define her entire military career. She thought about fear and courage, about hesitation and certainty, about the mathematics of survival that could not be calculated on paper but only in the critical moment when everything was on the line. She thought about going home, about trying to return to a normal civilian life where the choices were smaller and the stakes lower, and the ghosts of the past might finally stop whispering in the silence. But she knew the truth. There was no going back from what she had done. There was only moving forward, carrying the weight of what she had done and what she had failed to do, trying each day to be the soldier she wanted to be. The soldier who did not retreat when retreat meant death for others. The soldier who made the impossible shot when everything depended on it being made. The soldier who stayed. And when dawn came again, as it always did without fail, Rebecca Hayes would be ready.